What explain possible? So, in today's
It's
class, we'll
physical.
okay. Yeah, in today's class, we'll see about so what a user flow is basically. So since we have come to a place where we have identified the users, we have identified what are the pain points that the users are facing, and what are the jobs to be done for the users regarding our app that we are discussing right now, the Book Exchange app. So since we have arrived at the point where we are almost ready to go into the design phase, uh, by knowing all the user personas and the pain points and the jobs to be done, this is the final stage where we dive before we dive into actual designing. Right? So, but what is the user flow? Um, there are two things here. One is user journey and user flow. So there's very slight difference between these two. If you see closely, like I think the name itself would kind of give you an idea of what these two things will be. Right? Um, a user journey is a wide, what is it? It covers a lot of aspects. But a user flow is very restricted to your users who interact there. For example, let's take Spotify as an example, right? A user journey covers end-to-end journey of the user. It's not just about using the app, but if you are to write a user journey for Spotify app, right? What you'll do is the first thing is entry points. There can be different type of entry points for someone to come into the Spotify app. Say, for example, they can hear an ad somewhere on the radio or on the TV and just know about Spotify. Then that can kind of intribute their interest, and then that will be a starting point for the user. So user journey actually starts there. It just doesn't talk about um, the interactions with the app, but a overall picture of how the users feel about the product and what are the entry points, what are the exit points. So in this case, the entry point for the user here is the ad that they want, and from there they are coming into either say an app store or from Google. They're searching for whatever they heard, like for example Spotify, and they land into the app store and they click on install. So all of this is covered in the user journey, and it's a very high level flow. It doesn't talk about a lot of interactions within the app that the user is going to do. It just talks about the high level flow of what all the user is going to encounter if he is going to use the app or things like that. So let's say for example the user journey, the flow would be like for Spotify, flow would be like there are different entry points. So one can be a website, another one can be someone inviting them to the app, another one can be then listening to an ad on the TV or the radio. So these are the two different entry points. But for all the three different entry points, the next flow or the next step is going to be the same, where they go into the app store, download the app, and the next step is basically like they enter your register number, get registered, go search for your songs, listen to the song, you feel happy, and then you go talk to about someone else, maybe your friend or someone else, right? So user journey ends there. You come back again, start doing the same thing again. So a user journey on high level talks about your experiences or how you feel about the app. But a user flow is very specific. To be exact, a user flow covers all the tasks, individual tasks that the user is going to do within the app. So for example, in the same case as Spotify, a user flow is always restricted to that. Like the entry point and the exit point are always within the app. It's not outside of like in the user journey. It doesn't cover about the different apps that you see or the websites that you enter from. It doesn't cover that. The starting point of the user flow will mostly be the the icon that you click on the app, right, in the app screen or whatever. So in this case, user flows can be divided into multiple. Like since we know the jobs to be done for our app, user flows can be divided into multiple types. The one simple example of an user flow in Spotify is user wants to register on Spotify. This is a simple user flow, and you'll start this writing down how the user flow for the registration should be. So, for example, if I know I want the user to get registered, the user flow will simply be like this. User enters the app, right? And then the next screen is clicks on the mobile number field, enters the mobile number, next receives an OTP, enters the OTP, verifies it, and then goes into that. This is a simple user flow for registering into the Spotify. But why is this important? Why is the user flow important? Right? Uh, let's see the next example. Why is the user flow important? So we'll take this in a real world example, right? We'll understand, try to understand with a real world example. So if I show you this, or show this image to a builder, and I ask him to build this house for me, will he be able to do it? He will be able to do it. But what will be the complexity? He will not even know where are the rooms inside, what is inside this, right? So it just gives you one outside look of, oh, this just feels like, oh, it's a nice house, like it's a nice building or it's a nice house. From the outside, this feels that. But if this or trying and start building this, you will not even know what is in the first floor, how many rooms are in the first floor, where is the kitchen, where is the bathroom, how many bedrooms are there, right? How many car parking is available? Is there a garden inside? Will not have any idea on what is actually inside. So this is where a user flow actually helps you. But a better way of understanding whatever the rooms are part of this building is this, right? So the moment you see this, this is a plan. This is the plan of a building before a builder gets into the building. This is what they do. So uh, but what do they achieve by doing this? Right? So just by looking at this, I now know how many rooms are there. Where is the entry point? Sorry, where is the entry point? Where are the vehicles parked? How many rooms are there? Is there an attached bathroom inside every bedroom, or what are the common places? So is there a balcony? So all these things I'm able to communicate with my team, so or even the client, and it's easy for me to get feedback from the client and make alterations at this level itself. So, for example, if I don't have this, I have the plan just in my mind, and I build something else. But now the user or the house owner comes and asks me, "I don't want this room here. I want it somewhere else." What will you do? It's difficult to go, and at that point, it's difficult to say to alter things. But at this level, if you can get feedback from the user, you can actually change the place. Like say, for example, the master bedroom here. The owner says, I don't want the master bedroom here, I want it in the first floor. It's easy to change it to this level, right? And it's also easy, anyone who sees this, it's also easy for them to understand how this entire building is going to be built. Right? So the same way, user flow helps in an app. User flow helps in communicating with your team members on how an app is going to be structured, even for the engineers, developers, everyone. They just by looking at the user flow, they get an idea or sense of what all is going to be there inside that. What are the main screens? What are the main flows? Where all the user is going to take decisions on. So all these are actually covered in a user flow. So I think by just looking at this, you would have understood the importance or what a user flow basically means. But there are certain things that we need to do to create a user flow. So a user flow would typically, the basic outline or structure of a user flow would basically be this. So they start at some point. Users start at some point in their app. They to move forward, they do it here. They move forward, they perform some action, and based on the action, they'll have to take a decision. So there are different shapes that are used to denote certain things in a user flow. So for example, a circle is always used to denote the start and end points of your flow. And the rectangles or the rounded rectangles that you see here are the actions that you perform, right? So for example, it can be enter in a registration flow, right? So this action block can be enter your mobile number. It can be as simple as that. And after you enter your mobile number, this is the place where you make the decision, right? It will ask you, say for example, is this the valid mobile number, right? This is another screen which will ask you, is this a valid mobile number? And you're confirming an action, like you're making a decision, a yes or no decision. So this diamond shaped symbol is basically used as a yes or no scenario. So there can be only two scenarios when you're using this symbol. It is an S positive scenario and a no or negative scenario. So for example, this after you enter the registered number, mobile number, this says is the mobile number right? And if it is right, it goes to the next option. It actually maybe it can be enter OTP. If it is no, it will ask you to enter the mobile number again. So this is the basic structure of how we build a user flow. Okay. So as I said, these are there are a lot of elements to the user flow, but the basic items are these four. Um, so as I said, the circle is always used to denote the beginning and end of the flow, like the entry point and the exit point. And the diamond symbol is used to denote decisions that the user takes along the journey. Right? It always has two notes. One is a no, one is a yes, or positive and negative note. And we can also use a rectangle or rounded rectangles. This is actually used to denote the actions the user performs within the journey or within the flow. And this is the direction basically. And arrows, as we all know, it's used to denote the direction. So any doubt so far? I'm going to show you some real examples on what the user flow is.
No, sir. Basically, it represents the flow chart we usually do, right?
Correct, correct. It's a flow chart basically. So that's what we also call it as a user flow. So how the users flow through your app. That's it. What it usually helps you understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. But why is the user flow important, right? So before we move to this, I'll also show you on the screen. So is this screen visible? Or we are still seeing the same screen?
Like we are seeing ways the user flow is important. That's true. That's
Oh, okay. I'm back on the screen. So this is visible?
yes, sir.
Okay. So this example, I have covered the basic EV charging station app that we were discussing throughout the last night. So I've taken that example for now. I have three different scenarios. I'll walk you through three different flows that I've just put up here. So to begin with, there's a start. And what is the start? It can be the icon that you press, mobile icon or the app icon that you press on a screen. The moment you press on it, the register flow usually is like this. What it does is enter mobile number, right? Entering your mobile number. And the next step is, like as you said, it's validate mobile number. Is the mobile number right or wrong? If it's no, it'll again go back and say enter mobile number again. Or if it's right, we go to the next step of enter OTP. And if you entered the OTP right, it again go to access user location. Right? And here, what is this basically is so the app, the location permission is actually very important, right? So the moment you enter the OTP, instead of just landing you on the home screen of the app, what it does is it. I think we would have all seen this, right? Any app that install and it needs a location permission. The first time that we install the app itself, it will ask us for the location permission, right? So enter OTP. Since this is a location based app, this will appear. Like, do you want to, you know, give the location permission to the app? If you say yes, it will land you to the home screen. If you say no, you be another screen which will say go to the location settings and turn it on. Only then I'll be able to proceed further. Right? So this is a very simple registration flow that I put down. But just looking at this, we can take some decisions on okay, is this right? Am I going to even ask the mobile number or do I also need an email ID? Right? If there's an email ID, there'll be two different steps, right? What will be the step before this? Will be there'll be two different rectangles which will say login using mobile number, login using email, right? And there'll be two different flows for this. If someone says I log in with email ID, right, then the flow changes. And for someone who's going to enter through a mobile app, then the flow changes. Or you can also decide on it's not going to be two, it's just going to be mobile number. So I think this is where user flow really helps in finalizing a lot of things. And once the user flow is done, the moment you finalize on user flow and start getting into design, the chances of you changing the user flow should be very less. You shouldn't, it should not be like you have done a flow here, you're going and designing something like you have started designing, and Like midway, you find out, no, no, this is not right. I'm going to change the flow. It can happen very rarely. Cannot happen very often. It's not a thing that, I'll do some flow now. I'll go design it. I'll figure it out in design. It's not how that it works because it's a lot of effort that is involved in building. Like this is a very simple scenario of understanding how a home is built. Right? So it's not like you put a plan now and you start building and then you figure out the plan that you made earlier will work out. I'm going to, demolish some of the bricks that I've built and then going to change the plan. So it doesn't work that way, right? So similarly here also, once you're starting to put the flow here, you'll have to think at the base level, core level itself, is will this flow work? You'll have to think not just as like circles, boxes here, but actually as literal screens here. Like start enter mobile number. I'll now think about how is this screen going to look? What are the probably it's going to be a text field. What are the like if you show this to the engineer, right? What he'll think is okay, entering mobile number. So what are the possible scenarios here? So will I have to make an API call? So there are a lot of things, right? What if this mobile number is already existing in the database? So what should I do now? So there are a lot of things that goes into the user flow. So this will also help designers and also engineers. So this flow is actually important, right? So this is a very simple registration flow. I'll show you another flow of finding EV station. So this is a very basic job to be done, right? So in an EV charging station, and this is one of the jobs to be done. What is it is the user wants to find an EV station to charge the right? So this is the home screen. They assume they have completed all this step and they've landed on the home screen. So from here, the next step is find an EV station. So from home, what is the home is the moment you enter the OTP, correct OTP, and you enter into the screen, there are three different navigation buttons at the bottom. One is Maps. Maps is basically the internal native mobile app map. Okay. Maps. Next one is the wallet, and the third one is the profile. These three are the basic sections. So I've decided it here itself. So this is not going to change or should not change. If you're going to change it, you'll have to change it here, and you also need to have a strong opinion on where you're going to change. Say, for example, there's a wallet app here, there's a profile section here. I've not covered on what is going to be within the wallet, what is going to be within the profile, since this only talks about finding an EV station. So how do I find an EV station now? I land on the home page, I click on the map screen, and there are two different things that I can do from the map screen. One thing is enter destination, another thing is list of recent places. So the moment I land on the map screen, I see two things. One is a search bar kind of a thing where I can enter the destination that I'm, traveling to. Or by default, the screen itself shows me a list of recent places that I visited. Say, for example, I've often searched for a place. It can be, my office or whatever, or office from home, right? So these are listed in a list of places that the app already shows me, so I don't have to type it. So there are two different steps, right? And why I've used two different types of rectangle here is, I didn't tell you about this. So this type of slanting rectangle is used to denote user entry, user data input. So enter destination is a manual input where the user is going to enter, right? And the list of recent places, it's not a manual input from the user, but it's already existing predefined default list that is already there. So these are two different things, right? And so the map screen, what it tells you is map screen has two different actions that the users can perform. One is they can manually enter the destination or choose from the list of recent places that is already there. But after these two, right, any which way that I'm taking, either I'm entering a destination or choosing a recent list of places, what it does next is it shows me the list of EV stations for that particular place that I've chosen. It can be I've entered a place called Chennai, for example, and then it will show me list of EV stations in Chennai. Or from the list of recent places, if it can identify or if you have chosen Chennai, it will again land me into the show the list of EV stations here, right? So from here, what am I going to do? I click on, so there'll be a list of EV stations here, right? I click on any one of the EV stations and then I land into the EV station page. There's a dedicated page for every EV station. But why is it important? It can have a lot of information like if it's still active, what is the amount that they are charging, what is the rating, are there any reviews, comments that the previous users have left. So a dedicated EV page station page is also important. So now the user's goal is actually they have come to a position or come to a stage where They have now decided on what is the EV station that they are going to use or get their vehicle charged. Right? So this is the flow of find an EV station. Right? It's a very simple flow. But why I put a dotted arrow mark here is for this flow, for the task that I have taken, right, find an EV station, it can end here. But if it's a different scenario, right, it, there are still process or there are still steps that are pending after this EV station page also, right? But for this task, it ends here. So, for example, I'll show you next example on how this can be a little more detailed, right? So, for example, if it says find an EV station, but I'm also saying unreserved. So, reserve it for, so this basically is booking the TV station for the duration that I know I want to use the station for. So, how will this, the above example, how is this going to change? Is something like this, right? So, I'll tell you about this. So, until here, the TV station page, right, it is the same. Until here, this page is the same. As you see, home maps, wallet profile, enter destination or list of recent places. So list of EV stations. You have now come at a place where you have identified or you have come to a conclusion of this is the EV station that I'm going to, use. Now what are the next steps that will be there in that screen, right? So finalized on EV station page, there will be a button, say for example, there will be a button, right? Which will say reserve. And the moment you click on reserve, what are you going to enter? Next is enter date and time. Because even before booking, you'll have to enter what date you want to use it for and what is the time date for what, how many duration. Or this will probably even change. Like it will not be time. After entering time, there will also be another data which is say how much of charge do you want to enter. But again, you'll have to make a decision on can you even decide that here, right? So for example, if I say enter date and time and charge needed. So for example, if I say charge needed, it's not a wrong thing to do it here, but I cannot define it, right? At an app level, if I say I have a section for the users to enter input on, I need 50% of that, or I need 10% of that. Um, that's not right, right? Because if I'm going to reserve this for tomorrow, I'll not know how much of charge I'll need or how much of charge will be there in my vehicle. Depending on the usage, it will vary. So now at this stage itself, what I do is I don't need a section for how much of charge is needed because that is dependent on that is a very situation based thing. You cannot predetermine it, right? So I'll say I'm going to eliminate that here and I'm going to do it a little differently, right? I can decide that later, but this screen for you to reserve the station, I don't need that information. So I'm eliminating that information at this stage itself. Right? So enter date and time. The next after I enter date and time, it will ask me to choose a payment method. What is the payment method that you want to opt for? And there can be different payment methods like UPI, use the money from the wallet of the app itself, or credit debit card, net banking, or other wallets like PhonePe. Like UPI also is the same, but in general, wallets like there are a lot of other wallets that you can see, right? So these are different action items on like there are different payment methods basically, and the flow for each payment method is going to be again different. So I've just considered UPI here. So even if you're usually going to select UPI, there are again two different flows, right? One is you can either scan the QR that is displayed on the screen and then pay, or enter your natural the UPI ID of yours, and then will be another different flow. Like once you've entered your UPI ID, you'll have to then go to the specific app and then do your payment. But if it is QR code, you just open your app and do the payment, right? There are two again. This is a decision, or this is a scenario where it can have two different scenarios, right? One where the payment is successful, you'll say yes, reserved, right? If the payment has failed, you'll again go to the choose payment method, maybe a reply payment, and then you'll go to the choose payment method, right? So this is where this task flow of find a new station and reserve comes to an end. So reserve, this is the end point. So I think this is another user flow of right? So and this is the example. But if you see, I didn't put multiple branches or I didn't cover all the scenarios here. Why? Because it sometimes becomes complex. Say, for example, if I put again another array or another, if I cover all these scenarios, it would look overwhelming, right? So the goal of user flow is to keep things simple. We don't want to confuse anyone who is going to see this or make them feel overwhelmed. By looking at this, right, we can come to a conclusion or we can come to a point of, oh, these are the things that are, these are the basic three navigation items that are going to be part of this, app. But maps will have these two as their primary actions. And I show the list of EV stations. So you get an idea of how your screens are going to look or how your app or how the users are going to navigate for the tasks that they're going to do, how they are going to navigate and achieve that, right? So since we know the tasks to be or the jobs to be done for the user, based on that, we just map out certain scenarios using certain scenarios and personas. We just map out how are they going to interact and what will be the flow, right? So this is the idea of the user flow or how user flow is done. And why is it important again? It eliminates a lot of confusion and a lot of question making is made simple here. A lot of cross collaboration can happen. I can show this and I can show like get inputs from the user or from the developer asking is this even possible? Say for example, if I say um, you know, this screen here, the registration page here, right? Like as I said, I can discuss multiple scenarios on is mobile number alone important. From after entering the mobile number here, do we, along with the user access location, should we also ask them for message permissions on if we want to send alerts through a normal message or a WhatsApp? Do we have to ask them permissions here itself along with the user location? So all these things can be discussed here, and we'll now come to a conclusion or come to a final understanding of what all screens we actually need. So it's just uh, access, location access needed, or your contacts list is needed. Why do you need a contact list? Right? Maybe you can. I think it's probably not needed. Right? So all these things you can actually discuss and come to a conclusion on even before designing, because once you're the designing every screen, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, right? So we are how much ever effort and time you can reduce, you'll have to do it here at the user flow, right? So yeah, so I think you would have had a basic understanding of what a user flow and why is it important and what all needs to be done. So yeah, why is it so important? Again, the same thing. I'll show you the screen that I had a bit. Yeah, let's say I'm iterating a product, and you don't have to go back and forth to say this didn't work, this will work, this might not work. So that you're eliminating here, creating an intuitive user page design. Because by just looking at the user flow, you would now able to imagine how the screen is going to look or what are the buttons may be needed, what are the primary actions in the screen, right? So you'll be able to do a proper intuitive design going forward. Clarifying the idea to the colleagues on why is this flow important or why have you arrived at this flow or not any other flow, right? And again, predicting potential frustrations. With just looking at the flow, you'll be able to identify will there be errors here, like what if some of the steps are the users are not able to complete a certain step. Say, for example, in the payment process, right? What will happen if the payment didn't go through? How will the cashback happen. So all these things you'll be able to predict here. So in the payment successful page, like say for example, there are two scenarios that I covered, right? One is payment, successfully made. Another one is payment didn't go through. It can be two. Again, the negative scenario can be divided into two, right? One where your where your money is debited, and another where your money is not debited, right? There are again two different scenarios. So if the money is debited and the station is not yet reserved for you. So there's a frustration that you're able to identify and you'll be able to know how can you process the, like can you show the support screen there or chat with us. Like all these things you'll be able to decide at the user flow itself. And then you will be able to decide on what kind of screens are needed for that flow. So yeah, so all these things are helpful in a user flow will be able to identify. So yeah, that's it for today's class. Mm. I would also want you to do a homework on things we're going to do. a mobile exchange app, right? I want you to, or a book exchange app, I want you to create a user flow for finding a book to buy and uploading a book for exchange. So these two simple steps. Like how will a user find a book and buy it, or not even buy, just find a book maybe. How will they find a book, right? And then uploading a book for exchange. These are two different users, two different scenarios.